Hello, Oklahoma teachers and writers. Dr. Sarah Donovan here from Oklahoma State University, board member of the Oklahoma Council of Teachers of English, here to talk to you about writing comics and how to submit your comic to the Young Writers Contest. So as with the other suggestions I've had, I really recommend that you first take a look at the Anthology Examples from Madison Kirkpatrick, Michael Page, and Jack Morris. So you can click on the link up here in the slides. The slides are linked on the flyer. So you can take a look at all of these slides by clicking on the link that's on the flyer. So take a look at the examples, see what you notice, see what's been done before, and how you can stretch and develop ideas from the past and take it into something new that represents you, your art, your storytelling. I recommend that you also spend some time looking at comics and graphic novels. Read them, notice the stories, notice the artwork and the variety that there are. Some are black and white, some have a sepia tone, some are colored. Usually the tones, the colors, the shading tell the story just as much as the words in the bubbles. So take a look at some of these are our favorites. And you can also see that comics can be short jokes that you might see in the comic section of a newspaper, but comics can tell a story in 5 different panels, a snapshot of a story. It can be fiction, it can be superhero, it can be mystery, it can be thriller, it can have also lessons from history as well, so you can see the great variety that's here of all the different topics that people have written graphic novels about. So take a look around. Go to your local store, bookstore, Target, Walmart, look at what's available, take a look at what's online, and use those for inspiration. So then I want to talk to you just a little bit about the structure of the comic. So you notice that there's panels, all the different segments that you can see here. The captions, if you notice that the boxed caption at the top is a space that contains just a little bit of information that's not part of the dialogue. There are gutters, which are the space in between each panel. There are speech bubbles, what the character says. There are thought bubbles that look different, so they might have like more grooves around them. And that's the inner thoughts of the characters. You might notice that there are some sound effects, like onomatopoeia, that are in there as well to show movement. So I want to point out that you can do your comics in black and white, sketching, drawing, shading, or you can do color. And if you do color with color pencils or crayons or shading or pastels, you can take a photograph, a JPEG or PNG, high resolution, and submit that. So just a little bit about the speech bubbles and the thought bubbles. There are scream bubbles that indicate the character is screaming. They usually have a jagged edge around them. There's colored bubbles that convey emotion. So if there's red around the outside of it, it might indicate anger. If there's green, it might be envy. So you're going to use the color in your comic for symbolism and mood as well. There are icicle bubbles that have jagged icicles hanging from the bottom. They might represent cold hostility if there's that sort of tension in your story. For thought bubbles, you can see, again, as I mentioned in the last one, that they have kind of circles around it or sort of a different kind of shape, and then these bubbles leading down into the character's inner thoughts. Here's an example from Hey Kiddo. You can see the coloring here. You see the gutters, the panels, the speech bubbles, the thought bubbles, the gestures on the faces, the character interaction. And so you're inviting the reader to look at the images along with the detail, with the words to tell the story. And in this, you can see there's very few words, text in this panel from Hey Kiddo, which is a memoir. So you can even create your comic about your own life as well. But we're reading the characters changing from being from like that long shot where they're in the car, and then a close-up where they're or when they're driving in the car, but we can't see them, and then a close-up when they're sitting in the car, and then an even closer shot of the foot, and then of the hand, and then it kind of zooms back. So you can see how it's different points of view in the framing of the image. This is from The Prince and the Dressmaker, so the color is quite different. So look at the color from Hey Kiddo, and look at the color from The Dressmaker. So there's lots more detail here with the coloring. And large speech bubbles here to tell the story. So this relies on a little bit more dialogue, but you can see at the beginning, there's a panel that has the setting, and then a panel that shows the large context of what's happening, and then kind of zooming in for a one-shot person and then two-shot person. So it's almost like a movie here, and you can see their facial expressions. So it's a great idea to do a little bit of planning before you start working on it. So maybe you want to create 3 to 5 scenes for yours. So sketch it out, put some dialogue, and then the action. So this is a great planning sheet that you can create, or your teacher can create, or you can create in your notebook and start mapping out your short story in your comic. So think about what your character, how old your characters are, their hair, their clothes, their facial gestures, maybe the race, ethnicity, language. It's helpful if you're depicting characters who are of different culture, or as authors, you really have to think about representing what you know well as your own culture, your own experiences, and if you're doing something historic, that you want to make sure you do the research and that you are representing things with ethical responsibility toward avoiding stereotypes and bias in your story. So thinking about the setting and how the setting might be symbolic of what's going on, or the setting might be a place that the characters interact naturally, or the setting might be a place where there's conflict. Thinking about the coloring in the setting or the shades that you use, black and white, about the mood, if it's a serious mood or a light mood, that's going to impact it too. Okay, so here's some comic checklist for you. That you have a name of the comic, frames, speech bubbles, thought bubbles, a caption, narrative box, a jagged edge panel if you want to try a flashback, maybe try some onomatopoeia. In your 5-panel comic, have an individual frame or single drawing for each panel. The panels can be in different shape, but they should all fit into one page or one photograph. Each frame should show an action, and then just to kind of double check that you have a setting, at least 1 character, 2 characters, maybe to have some kind of interaction. Maybe the character faces an obstacle to overcome, or there's some sort of joke, depending on the genre that you're using for your comic. And in the end, there should be some kind of universal theme or reflection of humanity in some form that everyone who views the comic can have a takeaway, like whether that's, well, that's really true about it, that's really true about this, or that's kind of gets me reflecting on my own life, or that was kind of funny, a little insight into humanity that I didn't really think about. So any of those kind of things would be great. So there is your quick insight into how you might approach submitting a comic. Remember that you give your teacher plenty of time to review your comic, maybe before you take pictures or finalize everything, get some feedback from your teacher, and make sure that the teacher has the PNG and permission from you, dear writer, and your parents before submitting it on December 14th. So thank you all, and we look forward to seeing your comics. Bye.